We begin today a new Perek, the fifth Perek of Masechta Sanhedrin. Hayu Boitkin. Okay, so the Mishnah here continues the halachas of Eidos by din and nefashos, capital punishment. How do we interrogate the Eidim? Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Hayu Boitkin Noisam. They would interrogate the Eidim b'sheva chakiris. 7 questions of interrogation. Ve'ezeh shavua. In which year of the Yovel was it? A Yovel is divided into 7 times 7 years, then 50th year is Yovel. So in which year of the Yovel was it? Ve'ezeh shana. In which year, now within the group of 7 years of the Shemitah that belongs to that Yovel, in which year of that 7 years was it? Ve'ezeh chodesh. In which month of the year was it? Bekama b'chodesh. What day of the month was it? Rashi gives the example, was it Chaf or was it Chafei? Be'ezeh yom, what day of the week was it? Now, even though usually when you say what day of the month it was, so you should know what day of the week it was. Make the cheshbon, figure out what day of the week it was. But the point of all these questions that you ask, the Sheva Chakiris, is what's relevant to know for Eidim Zaymimin that want to come and be mazim and say Imanu Ayisim b'makom plani. So sometimes Eidim Zaymin could hear a date and they won't realize that it was that date that they were with this person in another place. When they hear the day of the week, they realize, oh, that day of the week we were with you somewhere else. So that's why you have to ask the question, not only what day of the month, but also what day of the week. And also be'ezeh shah, what hour of the day was it, and be'ezeh makim, what location was it. So as I mentioned, all these Sheva Chakiris are the main interrogations of Eidim, and this is what's necessary for the Eidim Zaymimin to be able to come and be mazim them, when you know that in that time they were in a different place. Rabbi Yosi says it's not necessary to ask all these questions. It's not 7. All you have to ask is 3 things. Be'ezeh yom, what day it was, and it could be, if you say it happened yesterday, or 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, you don't have to specify the day of the month, and the day of the week, and all these, it's not negeya. Be'ezeh shah, what hour of the day was it, and be'ezeh makim, and what location. That's it. That's enough for Eidim Zaymin to come and be mazim them. Now, here there's additional examinations of the Eidim, which are not part of the Sheva Chakiris, but this is B'dikis, where there are additional things that they ask the Eidim. Do you know who this individual is? You're testifying about him. Do you actually know that this is him? Hisrei somebody. Did you give him a warning? The Eidim are the ones that have to give him the warning. If they're testifying about someone that he served Avodah Zarah, so they have to ask from them the details. Esmi avad, what Avodah Zarah did he serve? Obameh avad, how did he serve that Avodah Zarah? Rashi here brings the example regarding Avodah Zarah. There's an Avodah Zarah called Pa'or, there's an Avodah Zarah called Markulis, and then it could be by slaughtering something for the Avodah Zarah, shchita, or it could be by hashtachva, bowing down. Now, kol amar bebedikis, any bezdin that asks many of these questions from the Eidim, in addition to what was mentioned here, arezim b'shubach. It's a bezdin that's praiseworthy. The point is, we want to try to chap the Eidim with something that they don't know, or something that's a lie, where the 2 Eidim are not going to be fitting with one another, and then you're not going to give the Chiyuv Misa. There was once a case where Badak ben Zakkai, Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, he examined the words of the Eidim to such an extent where he asked about Be'uktzei Te'enim, the stems of the figs. They said that it happened near a fig tree. So he asked them about the fig tree. How was the stems of the fig? Was it thick? Was it thin? So he hopped on even a small detail like that to examine the Eidim. Now, Ma ben Chakiris lebedikis, what's the difference in halacha between the questions, the Sheva Chakiris, the 7 interrogations, and the other additional examinations that you ask? Chakiris, when it comes to the 7 interrogations, if any of the Eidim say that we don't know the answer to this question, Eidusim B'Teila, the Eidus is nullified. Bedikis, however, when it comes to Bedikis, so then, if one of them says, I don't know, or even if 2 out of many Eidim say, we don't know, Eidus and Kayemes, their Eidus could still be in effect. Now Rashi here says, regarding the Chatkiris, that if 1 Eid, let's say there's 10 Eidim that are testifying, and just 1 Eid says that we don't know the location, or we don't know the place, or the time, the entire Eidus is going to be bottled. Rashi here is following the opinion that it says in the Gemara, that the point of these Chatkiris is to enable Eidim Zaymimin, to be able to be mazim the Eidim. And the halacha by Eidim Zaymimin is that they don't become Eidim Zaymimin, according to this opinion, unless you can be mazim the entire group of Eidim. So if one of them, regarding one of these chakiris, says, I don't know, so you can't be mazim the entire group, so the whole entire group of Eidim falls apart. Weiter, the Mishnah says, Echad chakiris ve'echad bedikis, both by the 7 chakiris and by the other questions that they examine them with, bizman shemakchishin zeh zeh, if the 2 witnesses that are interrogated separately, if they are contradicting one another with the information, with the details, they do some betela. The edus is nullified. Now, echad, here the Mishnah brings examples of where they are not fitting their words, but not always will the edus be bottled. Echad, if one says it happened on Beis in the month, the other aid says it happened on the 3rd of the month, in such a case, edus and kayemes. The edus is still kayam. Why? Because one of them knows that in the previous month there was a lamed, and therefore today it's only Beis. And the other one is not aware that there was a lamed, so he thinks that today is gimel. So in one day in the month, they could make this mistake. Now, however, if one says it's gimel in the month, and the other one says it's hey, so why are they making the mistake in 2 days? Edus betela. In such a case, the edus will be bottled. One says it happened in the 2nd hour of the day. The other says it happened in the 3rd hour of the day. It's all in the hours of the morning, but they're making them. They're not saying exactly the same. They're off in 1 hour. Edus kayemes. The edus still stands because in the hours in the morning they didn't have clocks in those times, and you see the sun in the east of the sky, and it's still the morning hours. They can make a mistake with 1 hour. One says it's the 3rd hour in the morning, and the other says it's the 5th hour in the morning, much closer to chatzos. Edus betela, a mistake of 2 hours they wouldn't make, and therefore the edus is bottled. Rabbi Yehuda says, even in such a case, kayemes, because it's a mistake in the hours of the morning, so even from the 3rd to the 5th hour, the sun is still on the east of the sky. So it's still within the morning, the edus is still kayem. However, one said it happened in the 5th hour of the day. The other said it happened in the 7th hour in the day. That's already past chatzos. Edus betela. Then the edus is bottled because in the 5th hour of the day, the sun is still towards the mizrach, the east of the sky. After chatzos in the 7th hour of the day, the sun is already towards the west. So how could they make such a mistake? After they interrogate one witness, machnisin hasheni, they bring in the 2nd witness separately, and they interrogate him. If their words are fitting with one another, so then now Bezdin has to begin discussing the halacha of this person. But they begin the discussion with the merit of this person. As the Gemara already discussed this before, they begin first with the schus to try to, as the Torah says, v'yitzila ve'eda. It's different from the Gemara explained before about this, what the schus is, but they begin first with his merit. If one of the witnesses themselves came and said, after he testified that this person is chayiv miseh, and now he comes and says, Yeshli l'lamadol of schus, I have something to say that he's innocent. Or if one of the students, as we learned before, that there were rows of students that sat in front of the Bezdin, if one of these students speaks up and says, Yeshli l'lamadol of chayva, I have something about the guilt of this person to say, v'shatkin, I say. In both of these cases, we quiet them down. Regarding the Eidim, the Gemara brought before that the Eidim can't say anything afterwards. They're negaya b'davar, because after they say the Eidos, all of a sudden they can become very afraid that what happens if our Eidos is found to be a lie, and then whatever punishment you wanted to give him will come back on us, so they may get cold feet, and that's why they're trying to now say something about his innocence, so we can't trust them, they can't speak. And by the Talmidim, if it's l'lamed chayva, one of the students that's not part of the Bezdin, to say something which is about his guilt, we don't listen. We're only going to listen to a Talmud that's not part of the Bezdin if he wants to say something which is a schus for him. Now, if one of the students sitting there says, I have something to say about him, that he's innocent, so then they elevate him. They bring him from the bench or from the floor where he was sitting as a student, and he comes and joins the Bezdin. And he didn't go away from the Bezdin the entire day, he became part of the Bezdin. And if the idea that he says is something that's significant and it's real, then we listen to him and he becomes a part of the Bezdin to paskin that this person is innocent. Now, even if this Baldin himself, the one that the saying is about, he himself says, I have something to say about why I am innocent. We have to listen to him as well. But only if he's saying something which is real, which is significant, not stam shtosim. If they find that he's innocent, patruhu. So then they paskin on that day that he's innocent and they let him go. Vimlav, if they can't find him to be innocent, so then they have to wait and sleep it overnight till the next day. Umizdavgin zugis, and then the bezdin breaks up after the discussion that they had together. The bezdin breaks up into pairs, and these pairs would discuss it with one another. And they wouldn't drink or wouldn't eat too much, that is, and they wouldn't drink any wine, in order they should have the clarity of mind to discuss this matter with one another. And then afterwards, they would, according to Rashi, when they would each one go home separately, alone, not as pairs, but then they would go home and each one would think it over himself. And the next day, they would wake up early in the morning. They would come to the bezdin. The one that said yesterday that he was innocent says, Ani mezake, I said yesterday he's innocent, and I stay in my place and I say that he's innocent. The one that said yesterday that he's guilty, so mechayiv. So he says that I'm still mechayiv, I was mechayiv yesterday, and I still say today that he's guilty. Now, hamalamed chayva, malamed chus, the one that yesterday said that he was guilty, can change his opinion and come to say today that he's innocent. Aval malamed chus, the one that said yesterday that he's innocent, he cannot in the morning come and say that I changed my opinion and I say that he's guilty, as long as it's still within the deliberations of the bezdin. But as we learned already before about this, Rav said when it comes to the actual verdict, he could change his opinion. But within the deliberations, he can't change his opinion. If they made a mistake about this, in other words, the ones that said their opinion yesterday don't remember what it is that they said yesterday. So then Shnei Seifrei Adayanim Maskirin. So we have the two scribes, as we learned in the Mishnah of the previous Perek, that was standing there and wrote down and recorded everything that was said. So they're able to remind the judges exactly what their opinion was yesterday. Now, if they find a merit for him, patruhu. So they say that he's innocent and they let him go. If they don't find a schus for him, so then they have to take account and to see whether they're going to have a majority. In order to say he's guilty, it's not enough to have a simple majority of one, but you have to have the majority of two. So now, so if when they take account, it turns out that it's 12 that say that he's innocent and 11 say that he's guilty. So zakai, just one in the majority to say that he's innocent, he's zakai. But if it's only one in the majority that says that he's guilty, so then in such a case, where am I over here? I lost the place of here. Just a second. If you have 12 that say that he's chayiv, and you have 11 that say that he's zakai, so you have only one of the majority that says that he's guilty, or if it's split even, and then the 23rd of the bezdin says that I don't know, I don't have an opinion, not this way, not that way. Or if the case over here is that one says any ideya, so then that's vafila esrim mishnayim mezakan and mechayvin. Even if you have 22 that are in agreement that he's innocent or guilty, and ve'echadayim any ideya, there's only one of the judges that says I don't know. In such a case, yisifu hadayanim. You have to add another two judges to the court, because if one says I don't know, it's like he's not part of the bezdin because he has no idea about this case. So it's like it was only 22. When you pass kana halacha for din and nefashis, has to be a bezdin of 23. So you have to add another two judges here. Now the Rishonim discuss why dafka two judges. There's various opinions. One of the opinions is because we said before that you have to have a peer that discuss it with one another. So because you're going to add, you can't just add one. You have to have two that will discuss it with one another. Now the kama meisifin, how many do you add? Shnayim. You add another two here. Shnayim, two. And then what happens if these two split as well? One goes to guilty and one goes to innocent. So again, it becomes split where you don't have that majority you need to say that he's chayiv. So then you have to add another two. Ad shivim ve'echad. You add more and more from 23, you add another 48 until you come to 71. Shloishim Meshisha Mizakin. So now, once you have 71, if you have 36 that say that he's innocent, Shloishim Chamishim Mechayven, and 35 say that he's guilty, Zakai. So we have one in the majority that he's Zakai, so he's going to be innocent. However, Shloishim Meshishim Mechayven, Shloishim Chamishim Mizakin. If you only have one in the majority that says that he's guilty, so then it's a problem. because you can't paskin. So what do you do? They have to discuss this again, the matter one more time. In order to get one of the people that says that he's guilty, that he should come over to the judges that say that he's innocent. So now you'll have a majority that's saying that he's innocent. Or, as Rashi says, it could also be the opposite. That if you'll convince one of the judges, an additional judge, that he's guilty, so now you'll have two in the majority that he's guilty. The Mishnah the Gemara said this before already. The Mishnah wants us to give an example of a case where we go to the schus, to the innocence. That's why it says this example over here. Okay, so the Gemara begins with the first halacha of the Mishnah regarding the 7 questions. This is the Sheva Chakiris. It says the Gemara Menon Emili. What's the source for this? That you have to ask 7 basic questions of the Edom. Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda answers the Amakra. The pasuk says, and there's one first pasuk. This is a pasuk that it says by the Irani Dachas. When you have a city that all the people in the city serve the Avodah Zarah, and they're going to be chayiv misa. And so the pasuk there says, "V'darashta v'chakarta v'sha'alta heitiv." So that's already 3. V'darashta is one question you ask. V'chakarta is another question, and v'sha'alta heitiv is a third question. Now v'oimer, there's another pasuk, and this is regarding an individual that serves Avodah Zarah. V'hugad l'cha v'shamaita. You were told about this and you heard this. V'darashta heitiv, and you should inquire well. So the 2 expressions, v'darashta and heitiv, is another 2. So we have already 5 questions that have to be asked if you combine what it says by Irani Dachas and what it says by Avodah Zarah. Now, v'oimer, in a third place, and this is by Edom Zaymimin, the pasuk says, "V'darshu hashoftim heitiv," and the judges should inquire well. So over here it says "V'darshu" and heitiv. It's another 2, so that's a total of 7 interrogations that you ask. That's the Sheva Chakiris. But the Gemara asks in this. These are sources from psukim that are written regarding 3 different places. The first was Irani Dachas, the second was Avodah Zarah, and the third was Edom Zaymimin. How do we know to combine them? Maybe I could say that I divide each one separately, and it's written. What's written there, that's how many interrogations has to be. By Irani Dachas it says 3, by Avodah Zarah it says 2, and then by Edom Zaymimin 2. So maybe you don't combine them to say that you always have 7 interrogations. If you're going to say that the Torah means that you should have 7 interrogations always, the Torah should write the 7 expressions of interrogation all by one. So the Gemara answers, we actually learn them from one another. Because they are all writing, in all these places, the Torah is writing the same point about interrogations, so we compare them to one another. And since we compare them to one another, it's as if it's all written together in one place, and therefore we say that it's 7. By all cases, it's going to be 7 interrogations. But the Gemara doesn't accept this because you can't just compare them. There are differences between one and another where one is more lenient, one is more stringent, so you can't just compare them. These different cases we're talking about here. Again, Irani Dachas, Avodah Zarah, and Edom Zaymimin. They're not the same. And the Gemara gives a simin for the points that they are different. Simin, Palat, Sayif, Hasra. So the first point here is Irani Dachas, Lahanach Tarti Ledamya. You can't compare Irani Dachas to the other 2. Shekain Memainan Palat. By the other 2, there's the Einish of Misa, but you don't have to take away the money and burn and get rid of all the money as well. Irani Dachas has a special stringency that the people in the city are killed. You gather all the possessions of the people in the center of the city, and it's all burnt up. So that's a unique stringency by Irani Dachas. So maybe I could say that by the others, there's a din of Sheva Chakiris, which is a certain leniency on the person. You're going to interrogate the Eidim more, which will make it harder to give him Misa. But who says you have that leniency regarding Irani Dachas, where you see the Torah is so machmeh that you get rid of all the money as well? Similar, Avodah Zarah, you can't compare Avodah Zarah to the other 2, to Irani Dachas and Edom Zaymimin. Shekain b'sayif, because by Avodah Zarah, which misa do you get for serving Avodah Zarah? The misa is the other 2. That is, the Avodah Zarah is actually skila, but the other 2, when it comes to Irani Dachas, it's going to be sayif, which is with a sword, and also by Edom Zaymimin, Rashi says that the Gemara understands. One shot Rashi says the Gemara understands that in the Edom Zaymimin, in that parsha that the Gemara brought the pasuk from before, it says nefesh benefesh, ayin ba'ayin, so it's referring to a edus about the ritzayach, and therefore over there the misa is sayif. Or Rashi says by all Eidim Zaymimin, even though there is skila as well, but because there's also the misa of Sayif, which is a lesser misa, so maybe over here the Torah is not so machmer in such a case, and therefore there's this leniency that there's the Shevach HaKiris of the Eidim. But who says it applies the same by Avodah Zarah, which we see the Torah is more stringent that you give a misa of skila. And so too the Gemara says Eidim Zaymimin lahanach again. Lahanach tati leidamye, the Eidim Zaymimin, it can't be compared to the other two. Sheken tzrichem asra. By the other two, there's a leniency that has to be asra, both by Yer Nidachas and by Avodah Zarah. The punishment of misa is only after a warning. By Eidim Zaymimin, when they are found to be false Eidim, there's no warning about this. And still, you give the punishment of Kashas Omam. They get a Misa. And so here you see there's an extra stringency by Eidim Zaymimin. So who says that the Shevach HaKiris should apply here? That's a leniency. So therefore the Gemara answers, we must say, Heitiv Yalfinan Mehadodi, that it's a Gzeir Shava, that it says the expression of Heitiv by all these cases. The Torah says Heitiv, Sha'alta Heitiv, Rashta Heitiv. So we learn out of Gzeir Shava of this word Heitiv that the same Chakiris that say by one applies to the other. Now the Gemara explains the Gzeir Shava Mufne. This is a Gzeir Shava where the words of Heitiv that we're learning out in this Gzeir Shava has to be an extra word, or there's something unique about this word that we know that has to be used for a Gzeir Shava. Because the Eloi Mufne, if it's a Gzeir Shava where you're comparing the words, but the word is not an extra word in the Torah, so then Ikele Mifrach. You can refute the Gzeir Shava with the questions that we just asked, that they're not compared to each other. The rule by Gzeir Shava is, if the words of the Gzeir Shava are extra, you can't ask any perich on the Gzeir Shava with any logical reasons. But if the words that you're using in the Gzeir Shava are not extra, so then you could. So over here, it must be, the Gemara is asking, it must be that these words are extra, otherwise we have the questions that we asked before already. So the Gemara says, lie, yes, this is in fact true, afnuye mufne. The words of Heitiv that it says here are extra. Why? And now the Gemara begins with the two first psukim that it brought. Midahavalei lemichta v'darshu v'chakru v'shani kra b'diburei beheitiv. This word heitiv is an unusual word. If the Torah wants to say that you should ask two questions, instead of saying the word heitiv, it should say v'darashta v'chakarta or v'darshu v'chakru. Not the word heitiv. The word heitiv means well, but that's not usually the word that the Torah would use. So the fact that it uses this unique word of heitiv, that's an unusual word, and therefore it's considered to be extra, that it's an Gzeir Shava. So those two words of heitiv there are definitely extra for Gzeir Shava. But the Gemara says, well, there was actually a third pasuk here that wasn't the Gzeir Shava. Vakati mufnu mitzad echadu. So it's only extra, these words of Heitiv, as we pointed out, regarding the pasuk that it says by Avodah Zarah, and by the pasuk that it says by Eidim Zaymimin, over there the word Heitiv is unusual. But the Gemara asks, by the other place though, by the first pasuk actually, that the Gemara brought by Irani Dachas, over there the word Heitiv is not extra. So, where am I going again? So these two psukim, the word heitiv is unique and it's considered to be extra. As we explained before, because the word heitiv is not the word that's usually used, it should have said v'darshu v'chakru. However, when it comes to Irani Dachas, what else should have the Torah written? Haksiva kulu hasam. Over there, the lashon of the pasuk is v'darashta, v'chakarta, v'sha'alta, and then it adds heitiv. So all kinds of usual expressions of inquiring, the Torah already said. You can't ask that the Torah should not write the word heitiv. It's an unusual word. You should use another word for inquiring, for asking. It already used all those words. V'darashta, v'chakarta, v'sha'alta, heitiv. So the fact that it writes the word heitiv is not considered to be unusual. The Torah is writing the word heitiv to tell you that you have to ask a third question. V'darashta, v'chakarta is one question, then v'sha'alta, heitiv is a third question. So over here, the word heitiv is not considered to be extra. So who says you can make this Gzeir Shava? So so like I said, now this is according to one opinion that when you have a Gzeir Shava and it's only extra on one side, the word is only extra on one, or in this case by two of the places, and it's not extra in the other place, in the third place here, it's still not a Gzeir Shava that's solid. You can still ask questions on it. So therefore the Gemara is asking over here, it's not completely extra. The word heitiv by Irani Dachas is not extra. So the Gemara says, no, but the Hasam Nami Afnuyim Mufne. It's still considered to be extra because Medahava Leila Michtav, true, the Torah wrote already with the Rashta v'chakarta, but the usual language of the Torah would be Daraish Tidraish, a double lashon of Drisha, or Chaker Tachker, But Vishani Kra B'dibure, the Torah switches and writes this unusual word behativ. With the word hativ, Shma min ala afnuya. That word hativ is still considered to be an extra word, and therefore it's a Gzeir Shava, and you can't ask any questions on the Gzeir Shava. We compare them to each other, and I say that in all these cases, the Edom have to be interrogated seven chakiris. Okay, now in all these cases, we're learning out from what kind of Chiyav Misa. The Chiyav Misa we spoke about over here is, by Avodah Zarah, it's Skila, and by the others, it's Sayif. Okay, now, but the question is, what if it's Edom that are testifying about someone, and it's a Chiyav Misa, which is not Skila or Sayif, but it's Chanike or Sreife. Those are the other two kinds of Chiyav Misa. Can we also compare them to these psukim here to say that you have to interrogate them with these 7 questions? So now the Gemara says, I can learn out the Chiyav Misa of Chanike, which is less severe than these two, so I learn it out with a Kavachayme from Skila and from Arige. Now, also Nisrafin, Bekavachayme, Miniskalim, and Sreife, which is also considered to be a lighter Misa than Skila, so I can learn it out from Skila. But the Gemara says that's actually a machlaikis. As we later in the Masech, the Gemara brings this. According to the Rabbanon that say that skila is more severe than sreife, so that I can say that if by skila, which is more severe, we're makel and we interrogate the Eidim with 7 questions, it would definitely apply to sreife. But Rab Shimon says that the misa of sreife is actually more severe, so the ma'ikla meima. How could you learn it out from these other cases? Maybe Sreifa is more severe and there is no Sheva Hakiris there. So there's no source from here to learn to Sreifa. So the Elam Rav Yehuda, so therefore Rav Yehuda says that the way we learn out the Sheva Hakiris and the reason why we have a Gzeir Shava here is different than what we explained before. So Rav Yehuda says there's actually additional words in the psukim here in these cases that tell us about more Hakiris and Drishas, it seems. Because then it says in the pasuk, by one of them it says Vihine emes nochin, and then by the other one it says again, you have to interrogate and see Vihine emes nochin. Is it true? Is it accurate? So now, if you add these words emes and nochin, which means that you're interrogating the Edom further to find out whether this is true and accurate, hachatzari. So now you really have 11 because you have the 7 expressions that were mentioned before, and now you have again emes and nochain twice, which is another 4. So that's really 11 expressions of interrogations. And therefore I say as follows: Sheva l'sheva chakiris. 7 is telling me the 7 questions as mentioned before, the 7 interrogations. Now we have another 3 extra expressions of interrogations. Why is the Torah writing these extra words? Dal klas l'gzeir shava. Take off another 3 for gzeir shava to compare these 3 cases where the Torah writes the chakiris to compare them to each other. In other words, instead of what we said before, that we learn it out from the hativ, that word hativ is an unusual word, Gemara is now saying it's not the hativ. It's the extra 3 words that we have here that teaches us to compare them to each other. But now, pashalahu chada, you still have one extra word here that we learn out from this. L'Rab Shimon la'asuya nisrafin. According to Rab Shimon, it's coming to teach that also by the Chiyav Misa of Sreife, which is the most severe, and I can't compare to the other cases, it's coming to add that even over here, I also have the Sheva Hakiris as well. That's according to Rab Shimon. Now the Rabbanon, according to the Rabbanon, you don't need really an extra pasuk for Sreife, because Sreife is considered to be a lighter misa than Skila, and you can learn it out with a Kavachayme from Skila. Milsa, the Asya, the Kavachayme, Tarach v'kasav lakra. We find many times that something that you could learn with a Kavachayme, the Torah still goes out of its way and writes it explicitly, and that's what the extra word comes to teach over here. Okay, so that's the pshat that Rav Yehuda said to explain these. According to him, he says there's really 11 expressions of chakiris that the Torah says. 7 are the actual chakiris. Another 3 is for the gzeir shava, and the last one is either for sreife or it's just extra. The Torah is coming to clarify, even though you could have learned it out from gzeir shava. Okay, but the Gemara says about this, Megadav ba Rabavo. Rabavo dismissed this pshat. When the Torah uses, when the Gemara that is uses the word megadav, it's a pretty sharp expression. Usually it means to curse. Over here it means that he made it with his hand. He completely dismissed this pshat of Rabbi Yehuda, and he said, "How do you know that extra one expression that the Torah said means to teach me on sreife, or according to the Rabbanon, even though you could have learned it out of Kavachaymer, but the Torah is writing it? Maybe that last one is actually coming to say that there's an 8th question. There's 8 interrogations." Now the Gemara asks, what's Rabavo's question? Are there 8 questions to be asked? The Mishnah went through all the questions, so we already have all the 7 questions. What else is there to ask? So So the Gemara says, Alam Aloi, why isn't there an eighth question? There is an eighth question the Mishnah didn't mention, and that is not only to ask what hour of the day it was, but also what time of the hour, what minute in the hour it was. The Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned this in a Braisa, is that you would interrogate the Edom and you would ask them 8 questions, and also what minute in the hour it was. So therefore, this is the question over here that Rabbi Vo was asking. That you could say that it's Shmoyne Chakirais. So the Gemara says, Ha niche la Abaye. This question of Rabbi Vo is a good question on what Rabbi Yehuda said according to Abaye. It is actually possible that you should have to ask an 8th question, what minute of the hour it was. Al-Liba de Rav Meir, he says according to Rav Meir, the Amar ein adam toye v'loy klum. When a person is testifying about something, and the 8 says it happened at 8:35, so the exact minute that he says, he doesn't make any mistake, and therefore you have to ask on the minute, because if the other 8 is going to say that it was another minute, then it could be a contradiction. So you do have to interrogate the minute. And now there's also another opinion that says the Amar Adam Toye Mashahu. A person can be off by a minute or 2, but not more than that. So therefore you also have to ask what minute in the hour it was, because one 8 could say it was 8:05. And another 8 could say it was 8:45, and that's a big difference. And therefore, it's important to ask the minutes as well. But Abaye says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Omar, Odom Toye Chatzisha. A person can make a mistake of a half hour, but not within a half hour. A person doesn't make a mistake. Rav says, To inchi tuva. A person within an hour, a person can make much more of a mistake. So then, so then, what are we going to say? Rabbi Vo's question, according to this, is not a question. There's no point of asking about the minutes, because within the hour, a person is going to make a mistake. So even if you find a discrepancy between the 2 Eidim, it doesn't matter. So what was Rabbi Vo's question according to this opinion? Says the Gemara, even according to this opinion, Rabbi Vo still has a question, because Elul Asuye bekama beyovel. But you can still ask, in what yovel was it? Now the Gemara clarifies, what does it mean bekama beyovel? So Haino Be'eza Shavua, isn't that what the Mishnah said when you ask which Shavua? So when we learned the Mishnah, as I explained, Rashi there says, what's the pshat is, which year of the yovel is it? There's 49 years until the yovel. In which group of 7 years of the yovel was it? So that question we actually ask already. Ella, the Gemara says, no, the 8th question would be, La'asuya be'eze yovel. In which yovel was it? Was it in this group of 50 years? Or did this happen in a previous group of 50 years, so in the previous yovel? So this may have happened a very long time ago. So you have to ask an 8th question about in which yovel did this happen. That's the question of Rabbi Vo.
Which isn't really practical.
Oh, so the Gemara now says, V'idach, according to Rav Yehuda, the reason he didn't have this question is because Kivin the Amar, Beis the Shavua, once you say in which year within this Yovel it was, like by Beis the Yovel, it's not necessary to ask in which Yovel it happened, because that would mean that these Edom witnessed something and they waited years and years until to come to Bezdin to testify about this. Usually a person sees something, he testifies soon after what he saw. So to ask about another Yovel that happened such a long time ago, there's really no reason to ask this 8th question. Going back to the Mishnah, it said Rabbi Yossi says, you don't have to ask all these 7 questions. You just ask 3 questions. What were the 3 questions he said? What day, what hour, and what was the 3rd point, and what place, location. That's it, but not all these 7 questions. Now the Gemara actually does not explain here what Rabbi Yossi does with all the psukim that we brought before, where there was a clear source for 7 chakiris. The Gemara does not go through to explain that. In the Rishonim, there's a discussion what exactly Rabbi Yossi does with all these psukim that we had before. But the Gemara explains the reasoning behind Rabbi Yossi's opinion. So here it brings a braisa that there was a discussion between Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim. Tan yamalem Rabbi Yossi lachachamim. Rabbi Yossi says to the Chachamim, L'divreichem, according to your opinion, mishu bava amar. A person that comes and says, Emesh haragai, he's testifying about yesterday, it happened that so-and-so killed. So now you're going to have to say to him, Bezdin's going to interrogate and ask, Be'ez Shavua, which year of the Yovel was it? Be'ez Shana, which year of the Shemitah was it? Be'ez Chodesh, which month? Bekama b'Chodesh, what day of the month? What's the point of asking him all these questions? He just said that it happened yesterday. So you know what day it is. Now when the Gemara here says yesterday, it's lavdafka yesterday, but it could mean yesterday or 2 days ago or 3 days ago. But the point is he's telling you exactly which day it is, so it's not necessary to ask all these questions. Amrullah. So they said back to Rabbi Yossi, and Lidvarecha, according to your opinion, Mishabava Amar, someone that comes and says, Ach Shavaragai, it happened today. I'm walking into Bezdin, it just happened today. So according to you, you said you have to ask him what day it was. So you have to ask him what day it was, beis the shah, what hour it was, beis the makim, and what the location was. He's telling you what happened today. So why is it, even according to you, why is it necessary to ask him whether it happened today? What day it was, if he's telling you what happened today, that is. Elo. So the Chachamim are saying, what's the reason that you still ask that question? We ask these questions, even though it's not necessary to ask all these questions. We still ask it. We place upon, we put upon these Eidim all these interrogations, and we ask these questions. And the reason is like what Rab Shimon ben Elazar says. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says that there's a point of tiring out the Eidim, of getting them to become anxious and to actually pull back and say, forget about it. We don't know. We don't want to say the Eidos. Because they're saying Eidos about capital punishment. We want to do anything to dissuade the Eidim of saying their Eidos. So therefore we ask all these questions, even if it's not necessary. So even if it's not necessary to ask these questions, we're going to ask it anyways. Rab Shimon ben Elazar, like Rab Shimon ben Elazar said, Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, you take them from one place, you take them to another place, and you get them to be anxious enough that they shouldn't want to say the Eidos. And Rabbi Yossi still argues back, and according to him, how does he explain this? Rabbi Yossi says, Emesh haragoi shchiach. That an aide walks into Bezdin and says that this happened yesterday, or 2 days ago, or 3 days ago. That's very common. Usually when a person says Eidos about something, when does he say the Eidos? It happened a few days ago, and he walks into Bezdin. So therefore, in most cases, it's not necessary to ask the questions, what they have the Yovel, what they have the Shemitah, all those are extra questions. So Beroi Vedius, again, in most cases, the testimony is about what happened yesterday or a few days ago. However, what you're arguing back to me, that possibly it happened today, and they're walking into Bezdin to testify what just happened, that's not actually common in most Eidias, and therefore Rabbi Yossi is saying, the question that I'm saying you have to ask, what day it happened, in most Eidias it would be necessary to ask that. And even in a case where they are testifying that it happened today, we're still going to ask that question. So the way the Mefarshim explain this is, the point there is, Rabbi Yossi agrees to this concept that Rab Shimon ben Elazar says that you're going to ask a question that's really not even necessary. But to a degree, only regarding the Eidos, the way most times they testify about something that happened yesterday, 2 days ago. So we ask them in such a way. And then even in the minority of cases where they testify about what happened today, we'll still ask that question. But to come and ask all these additional questions where in most cases it's b'chalal not necessary, we don't go so far. But the Chachamim hold, no, we're going to ask all these questions, even if in most cases we know that they're not relevant, but we're still going to ask them just to tire out the Eidim so that maybe they'll pull back from saying the Eidos. Okay, going back to what it said in the Mishnah, the Mishnah says that we then ask them additional questions besides the Shevach HaKiris. We examine them and ask, do you know who this person is? Did you give him Hasra? Tana Rabbanan and Braisa we learned. We ask them, do you recognize this person? Nachri Harag, did he kill a guy? Or Yisrael Harag, did he kill a Yid? Hasrei somebody, did you warn him? Kibbal olav Asra, did he accept the Asra? That means that the person that's listening to the Asra, he has to say, I know, I hear that you're warning me, and he's accepting it. And not only that, hitter atzmai lemise, he has to clearly say, they have to warn him, if you're going to do this and this, if you're going to serve Avodah Zarah, you're going to do this and this, you're going to be chayiv this and this misa. And he has to respond and say, yes, I know I'm going to be chayiv this and this misa, and still I'm doing what I'm doing. So did he respond this way? Hamis b'toich kedei dibur, did he go and do the avera? Did he kill someone within kedei dibur, within a few seconds of when you warned him? And by Avodah Zarah, if they're testifying about someone that served Avodah Zarah, you have to interrogate and ask, Esmi Avad, exactly what is Avodah Zarah did he serve? Le'po'er Avad, Le'markulis Avad, different Avodah Zarah, Supameh Avad, how did he serve this Avodah Zarah? Bizibuach, by slaughtering, b'kittor, by burning, b'nisuch, by pouring, b'shtachvo, by bowing down. These are all the details that you have to interrogate. Okay, the Gemara will continue on, B'negei to the Hasra, the halacha of Hasra, so it goes into the next Talmud.